This is the Predominantly Orange podcast, brought to you by the staff over at Predominantly Orange. It's Rocky Mountain Thunder approved, bringing you all the latest news and analysis of Denver Broncos. Alrighty, welcome to the Predominantly Orange podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It is a beautiful Sunday morning in the Rocky Mountains, and the Denver Broncos victorious last night over the San Francisco 49ers. Week 2 of the preseason, 33-14. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, if you check Twitter this morning, if you check it last night during the game, and you see all these different things that are going on between, you know, fans debating about the quarterback competition, okay, and you got actual game action going on. People get so caught up in one-sided analysis based on, okay, everybody's talking about the quarterback play, but nobody's talking about the offensive line, the running backs, the wide receivers, and also nobody's talking about the defense. I thought the defense performed very well last night. The Denver Broncos last night obviously coming out on top 33-14, but the first part when the first defense was in, you know, a lot of people were talking about, you know, the element of you got no pass rush with Von Miller not playing, Shane Ray, Shaquille Barrett, those guys out, Jared Crick, Derek Wolfe not playing. You have no pass rush. I don't really think Denver attempted a pass rush until a little bit midway through the first into the second quarter. Vontaze Dora and Kasim Edebali on the edge. They just ran a four-man rush primarily for the most part, and it allowed, you know, Brian Hoyer to hit, you know, deep to intermediate crossing routes in the middle. You know, when you have your defensive backs cover, it was kind of a vanilla defense last night for the ones. I don't think they wanted to send too many guys up into the realm of contact in terms of keeping guys healthy. But the good news is nobody came away injured last night out of the game, so that's a great start for the Denver Broncos right there. It's a little bit of reassurance for a lot of people. So when we look at how the game went, obviously it was a very impressive win in my opinion. Yeah, it's preseason. You know, people always talk about, oh, it's just preseason. Teams win, teams lose in preseason, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't carry over any effect to the regular season. Yeah, you know, I agree. It doesn't really affect anything going into the regular season. However, it gives you a look at guys who are going to make the roster, and it allows guys to brush up on things. And you get to see which guys can potentially come in and play a role during the regular season. I think Jamal Carter, for example, is a guy who's playing really well in the preseason. Corey Nelson as well, that I think those guys are going to get in during the regular season and be a huge focal point to the Denver Broncos going forward. So, Let's address the elephant in the room. Obviously, if you're paying attention on the social media airwaves, everything's talking about Paxton Lynch, Trevor Siemian, like we've talked about all summer long. And I know if you guys are with me, I'm pretty annoyed. I'm over the narrative quite a bit, to be honest with you. I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of the divisiveness over the fan base based on someone's preference of quarterback. And if you follow me, if you follow my tweets, I don't have any preference as to whether it's Paxton Lynch or Trevor Siemian. My stance as a Denver Broncos fan and analyst is I want the guy who's going to give the best chance for the team to succeed and have a chance to get into the playoffs and compete. Okay, and when I see that, it wasn't Paxton Lynch if we go based off of the last two preseason games. It simply wasn't. Paxton Lynch didn't play bad last night. Okay, he went 9 of 13. He threw for 39 yards. He scrambled a little bit. He ran for over 20 yards. But like I said last night, I even opened up on his first drive. He stepped back to pass. He threw a bubble screen to Benny Fowler, who tripped on the turf. It was the turf's fault. He looked a lot more comfortable in the pocket last night. And I said that. I came out first thing and I said, Paxton Lynch looks a lot more comfortable under center, stepping back in the pocket. Now, where my biggest gripe on Paxton Lynch came from, and we saw it, this is where he generated a lot of his runs, was the play-action game. He pretty much opened up. It was a play-action pass, and he didn't even allow for the routes to develop. On a play-action pass, obviously, a lot of times there you'll have a deep route, but you also have a lot of deep crossing routes as well. That's what play-action is for, is to get the defense to flow one way while you have crossers flowing the opposite. He'd do the play-action fake, half second, 1 second, and he'd run. He wouldn't let the play develop. And that's my only gripe that I really have with Paxton Lynch, and I think that is due to inexperience. And he did a lot of that at Memphis. He did a ton of that at Memphis because he was able to make those plays at the college level. Now, when you get in the NFL and you have defenses who can cover sideline to sideline, hash to hash, edge defenders who keep contained and play really heavy force, then that's where you have a lot of issues. He picked up some first downs, but I guarantee you, if you've ever played the game of football, if you've ever coached the game of football, you know one thing is for sure. Coaches do not like that. Coaches want a quarterback to go through his read, trust his reads, go through the progressions, trust that your offensive linemen are going to give you enough time to throw the ball and that your receivers are going to get off coverage. And that he didn't allow for that to develop last night. And I'd say that's my only gripe on Paxton Lynch last night, who got the start with the ones. Trevor Siemian started last week with the Chicago Bears. So my biggest complaint, it's just that with Paxton Lynch is that, he's a little timid. He doesn't take time to let his reads develop. But I'm not saying that Paxton Lynch is a bust, just like almost all these other people on Twitter. I don't think he's a bust yet. We can't label him a bust. He hasn't necessarily had the full time to get his feet wet in the NFL. Do I think he's ready to play right now in the NFL for the Denver Broncos? Absolutely not. I think there needs to be some element of development for NFL quarterbacks. This is the kind of thing that we see every year. I'd say since, when was the last time there was an actual draft where the quarterback taken in the top 10 or even in the first round ended up panning out and being very successful? I really don't see much of that happening anymore, and I haven't seen that. Maybe Carson Wentz might be the exception. It depends on how he plays this year. I liked what I saw from Carson Wentz last year. But we haven't seen a quarterback play, a guy coming out of the first round, instantly making an impact and taking his team to the playoffs or even winning games, for that example. So Paxton Lynch started last year against the Falcons, and the Falcons were a dang good football team. They were in the Super Bowl. But it was that inexperience, too. It was that inexperience that we saw from Paxton Lynch, having an actual pass rush in your face. In 49ers practice, they held joint practices this past week. They didn't really send blitzes. The 49ers didn't really blitz at all in practice. And people were talking about, he went 12 for 12 in an unpadded practice. Well, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything when you don't have any pressure in your face. You don't have any press coverage. Realistically, most NFL teams, most cornerbacks will play press man-to-man coverage when there's some kind of element of a blitz. Most times, corners play off-man coverage or zone. It depends. It all depends. So, hey, reach out to me on Twitter if you're listening to this right now. My Twitter username is @CodyWorkPO. Tweet us at Predominantly Orange, @PredomOrange as well. Give your thoughts. What are your thoughts on last night's quarterback play and also the Denver Broncos? What was your analysis? How did they grade out in your opinion? Did the Broncos defense impress you a little bit? I thought they were pretty impressive, in my honest opinion. I thought they played really well last night. I think special teams still struggled a little bit. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But yeah, tweet me on Twitter @CodyWorkPO. Let me know what your thoughts, what you are feeling, what you are thinking, and I'll read them live on air. And then if you want, I'll give you a chance to call in. But yeah, we got a half-hour show here slated for the Predominantly Orange podcast live on this Sunday morning after the Denver Broncos took down the San Francisco 49ers 33-14. Paxton Lynch completed 9 of 13 passes, 39 yards. He had a lot of short stuff and the play calling too. He threw a lot of short routes, some screen routes late to the tailback. Trevor Siemian came in, went 8 for 11 for 93 yards and a touchdown pass to Jordan Taylor. Trevor Siemian, in my opinion, last night came out. It didn't matter if it was with the ones, didn't matter if it was the twos. He looked comfortable in the pocket. He dropped back. He was quick with his reads. He was quick with his throws, and they were on the money. Most of his passes were directly on the money. I thought the pass protection held up decently enough for Trevor Siemian last night, even though you had Tyson Brilo in there, and you had Tyson Brilo is an interesting character. He's an interesting character. I didn't see much of Michael Schofield last night, which was odd. He may be an odd man out in Denver, but Tyson Brilo has been trying to fight for a roster spot this entire training camp, and I just don't think he's going to make it. He hasn't been consistent enough, and in the NFL against elite pass rushers, you cannot get beaten every play, or you cannot, be bull rushed. That's the thing that most people don't get. If you, as an offensive tackle, get bull rushed every other play, the likelihood of you having a long career in the NFL is not that likely. It's probably not going to happen. I thought the guard play was much better last night for the first team. I thought Alan Barber was good. I thought Menelik Watson had an overall better game. Obviously, we saw rookie tackle that we drafted in the first round, Garrett Bowles. He struggled a little bit. He had some penalties, some holding calls. But you know what? That's perfectly okay. People were like, oh, we wasted a first-round draft pick on a tackle who can't not get a holding call. I saw tweets like that last night, and it just goes to show me that most of these people don't watch football outside of Sundays, and they don't look into it deeper. He's a project. He's a big project, and he's got a lot of upside. He's got a little more upside right now than anybody else on the roster that I think that's not, a Ronald Leary, a veteran player, or Matt Paradise. Connor McGovern's playing pretty well too. I think when Matt Paradise comes back healthy, you have some options too. Max Garcia, he's in competition with Alan Barber right now at the guard position. He got bull rushed several times against Chicago, a couple times last night. Max Garcia is the kind of player who he didn't necessarily stand out by performance-wise, but he did well enough last year and the year before that not many people really thought that he was bad, and he's not that bad of a guard. It's just that he has this, just like Tyson Brilo, he has this tendency to allow a bull rush to knock him back into the quarterback, and you cannot have that happen in the National Football League. It just doesn't translate to success. So yeah, tweet me your questions at CodyWorkPO. I'm reading them off right now. I've been engaging with my man Jared Frazier. We've been talking about the quarterback play. A lot of people are saying that the Broncos screwed up the quarterback battle by letting this thing carry on a little bit. I don't necessarily agree with that. I see everyone saying the sky is falling. This one guy at Colorado said, both are terrible. We are screwed this season. And my simple reply was, I hear tennis is accepting new fans to watch in the fall. It probably won't be so terrible over there because tennis is a single-person sport. In the National Football League, it is an 11-man sport. On offense, 11 men on defense. It's a 22-man game. You have the special teams element, but everyone always focuses on one singular guy as the reason that a team wins or loses. And not all the time. It's the quarterback that always gets the blame or the glory, for that matter. In games where the Patriots lose, not many people will blame Tom Brady, but they'll blame the defense. You can't please anybody in the National Football League. You can't please fans. But the thing is, if you as a fan, and this is my hard stance on this, if you as a fan truly believe that the Denver Broncos with Trevor Siemian, who they went 9-7 last year, Trevor Siemian sat out one game they lost, so technically they went 8-8 with Trevor Siemian due to the game he sat out against the Falcons and he sat out against the Jaguars where Paxton Lynch played. The defense played well enough to secure the win for the Denver Broncos. But the Broncos had no run game last year, and people tend to forget that. After C.J. Anderson went down and got hurt against the San Diego Chargers, they didn't have a run game. The run game was non-existent. They had Devontae Booker. They had Justin Forsett. They had NFL defenses that knew what a Gary Kubiak offense looked like, and the offense was so predictable. Defenses slanted, they pinched, and they stunted right to where the play was going to go. On 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, and the Broncos couldn't even convert a 2nd and 1 or a 3rd and 1. That was the common theme last year. There was no run game. So think about it this way. The Denver Broncos go 9-7. The Denver Broncos had a chance to win 2 games against the Tennessee Titans. Benny Fowler drops a touchdown pass from Trevor Siemian that would have won them the game. He drops a pass late in overtime, too, that could have won the Denver Broncos the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, let's say they both catch that. Then you go 11-5. You're in the playoffs. You never know what can happen in the playoffs. We saw it last year, the Denver Broncos. They had Brock Osweiler step in halfway through the regular season when Peyton Manning got hurt and wasn't playing that well. Okay, Peyton Manning comes back against San Diego, Week 17, leads a game-winning drive. C.J. Anderson punches the ball in and they score. They go to the playoffs. They secure the number 1 seed. Okay, they play okay. The offense plays decent in the divisional game against the Steelers. Not good enough, but the defense comes up big, forcing the turnover. Obviously, Bradley Roby forcing the turnover. DeMarcus Ware recovered. C.J. Anderson punching the ball in to give the Denver Broncos the win. And then you go, and the offense plays pretty great against the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game. Peyton Manning comes out, throws 2 touchdown passes to Owen Daniels, and then the defense comes up big in a great game. It's one of the best, in my opinion. It's one of the most classical games in the NFL. Was that AFC Championship game right there. Brady versus Manning for the final time. The defense versus Tom Brady. That's when we knew Denver had a really good chance at winning the Super Bowl. Not a lot of analysts gave them the chance going into Super Bowl 50 that they would win because of Cam Newton and the Panthers' prolific offense, the MVP versus the Denver Broncos. And many analysts said the Broncos would lose worse to the Panthers than they did the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. And the defense comes out. Peyton Manning plays well enough. He manages the game. He makes throws, converts on third downs, and the defense absolutely dominates. Denver Broncos win Super Bowl 50. Okay? You don't need a guy necessarily at quarterback to throw spectacular numbers or stats. Let's not forget, Trevor Siemian was a few hundred yards away from throwing for 4,000 yards. He threw 18 touchdowns to 10 interceptions while playing hurt. Led them to a 5-0 record at first. Okay? I'm not ready to give up on Trevor Siemian just yet after 1 year because, we went 9-7, didn't make the playoffs. We haven't seen all we can see yet from Trevor Siemian. And if you think that after one year, not even a year where he actually got a full 16 games in, where you think Trevor Siemian is who he is, he reached his ceiling, that's all he's going to be, that's as good as he's going to get, I tend to think that maybe you don't know football. And that's just my honest opinion. Okay? And I don't have any disrespect towards anybody regarding it. I just don't value your opinion on that because anybody knows that quarterback play can improve with development. Okay? Look what Bill Musgrave did with Derek Carr over in Oakland. Okay? Right now he's primed to be a top quarterback in the National Football League right now. Okay, and he had a great year last year. Then he unfortunately got hurt, broke his leg. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. He was having a very great year. In my opinion, he was having an MVP-type year. And he got the Raiders to the playoffs. Unfortunately, without him there, they didn't do that well. And they didn't do well against the Denver Broncos Week 17 last year because they didn't have him. They had Matt McGloin. Okay, what are you going to do with Matt McGloin? And then you have your defense, who played pretty well last year, the Raiders defense. Didn't even show up the last 2 weeks of the regular season against the Broncos, and didn't show up against the Houston Texans. You let Brock Osweiler, who's currently not even the starting quarterback in the Cleveland Browns franchise, to win, to run, to score, to rush for a touchdown, to tear your defense apart. I'm sorry. I do not think that we have seen the best yet of Trevor Siemian. I think last night he looked a lot more confident. If he can be confident and he can show emotion, I absolutely believe that Trevor Siemian can have some success in a Mike McCoy system with coaching and tutelage from Bill Musgrave, with these weapons like Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, some options at tight end. We don't know what we have at the tight end position yet. Okay, we've got Jeff Hireman, we've got A.J. Derby, we've got Virgil Green, but which guy's going to be that prolific playmaker across the middle on a 3rd and 7 that you need? The Denver Broncos utilized the tight ends quite a bit last night. Hireman and A.J. Derby played pretty dang well, in my opinion. They ran scat routes, they sat at the sticks, and they picked up first downs. And Siemian looked a lot more comfortable. He looked confident out there. He didn't have to think. He just went out there and he played ball. And he went 8 of 11, 93 yards, threw a touchdown, back shoulder throw to Jordan Taylor. He looked pretty impressive, okay? So, yeah, for all you sky is falling people, the Denver Broncos aren't going to the playoffs. They're screwed with either quarterback. The sky's falling. Take some time to actually go back and watch the All-22 film, okay? Go through and analyze, honestly, what elements played into the fact that the Denver Broncos offense last year wasn't that productive. Think about it. As soon as C.J. Anderson went out, the run game, the offense became one-dimensional. It pretty much forced the Denver Broncos, it pretty much forced Trevor Siemian to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. And when you have to do that, the likelihood of you having a lot of success is not that good. So I'm not ready to give up on Trevor Siemian just yet. I think he's the guy. He's evidently the guy that's going to be the Denver Broncos starter this year at quarterback. Okay? And Vance Joseph said it perfectly last night. It doesn't matter where you're drafted. All that matters is the performance on the field. Okay? And so now we're talking about two guys. We're talking about a first-round pick in Paxton Lynch. We're talking about a 7th-round pick out of Northwestern and Trevor Siemian. Think about it for a second, okay? The 7th round pick in Trevor Siemian has been playing better, has been playing more consistently, and has been the most error-free quarterback in this competition as camp has gone and as preseason has began so far. He's looked better than the first rounder. Okay, so I'm not writing Paxton Lynch off. He needs time to develop, and I've said it. And former Denver Broncos safety Nick Ferguson, who's a good friend of mine, and we've talked about this on air many times. We both believe that the Denver Broncos they absolutely need, not just the Denver Broncos, but the NFL as a whole, needs a developmental league where quarterbacks that aren't playing can have time to develop, receive some kind of game action in a similar system. And I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do an NFL D-League because the dynamic of that is a lot more different than you see in the NBA with the NBA D-Leagues. You know, they play games every 2 days. Well, what happens week to week? If, let's say there was an NFL D-League, you have the hypothetical that, let's say, okay, yeah, your team plays on Sunday or plays on Thursday or plays on a Monday night. And then you have a D-League game that plays on a day that NFL players don't play. What if the guy gets hurt? Okay, I absolutely get that. But how can NFL quarterbacks develop now? Because NFL quarterbacks are being drafted, thrown into the fire against great defenses or a faster game where the speed, the tempo, and the demand for the game is much greater than it was in college. You're a lot more tested in the NFL than you are in college, unless you play in Alabama. What do you do in that regards? How do you develop a quarterback? I really don't. It's hard in the NFL to learn how to actually develop a quarterback. Some guys are born with the trait where they can be thrown in and be good. Okay, look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady, he came in, through injury. And he was a guy that, he went late in the draft. He wasn't a first 3-round guy. He wasn't a top 10 player like some of these quarterbacks that are being drafted. And then the story of Brady begins. Okay, and let's look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning had one of the worst rookie seasons by a quarterback. He still holds the rookie interception record. Okay, well, let's look at how Peyton Manning became over time. Where is he now? He's among the greatest. When you talk about Peyton Manning, you talk about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, who currently owns most of the NFL quarterback records. 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's been to the Super Bowl 4 times. I'll take that. So if we want to give up on Trevor Siemian or even give up on Paxton Lynch after one season, then I have no idea what we're even doing. Why even have a quarterback? Why not just put a prolific athlete at quarterback and just have him run around? Okay? It doesn't work that way, and it never will. All right? So when we return from commercial break, we're about to take a quick break here. We will jump right back in, get some Twitter feedback from our Twitter followers at Predominantly Orange and at Cody Rowe PO. We're gonna cover some of these hot takes, debate it, discuss it. You want to be on it? Let me know. I'm right here. So we'll be back in just a moment on the Predominantly Orange podcast.
No place like home. Get your tickets today at NFL.com.
The 4 of us, we never missed a game. Then life, jobs, kids, new cities. It was time we got back together. A few minutes on NFL Ticket Exchange, and we were set. 4 100% authentic, real deal tickets to the Niners. From one fan to another. There's nothing better than this.
This is iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio makes you want to move.
When you have a great melody,
A song lasts forever.
Instantly connected.
I love it when the beat goes boom.
iHeartRadio is the way I get to you.
The biggest song, the biggest artist.
All in one place.
iHeartRadio.
I'll see you there.
You've been listening to the Predominantly Orange podcast, brought to you by the staff at Predominantly Orange. Visit the site, predominantlyorange.com, and follow us on Twitter at PredomOrange, covering all things Denver Broncos. You can also listen to the show on iHeartRadio. All right, welcome back from commercial break. We're back here on the Predominantly Orange podcast. Be sure to tweet me at CodyWork, P-O, and tweet our page at PredomOrange. Head over to predominantlyorange.com right now to check out the latest news, analysis, and roundtable discussions that we like to have. Obviously, we got the analysis already up on Predominantly Orange about last night's quarterback play. We broke down Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, and the Denver Broncos as a whole. We broke down their performance as a team. And so let's get to the team performance, actually. Okay, and this is something I wanted to talk about. That often, people lose sight of the fact that the Denver Broncos are an organization. It's not, the Denver Broncos are not Trevor Siemian. The Denver Broncos are not Paxton Lynch. There are other guys on the team. So let's cover. We'll go by some quick stat analysis real quick for how the Denver Broncos played last night. Obviously, we talked about Paxton Lynch going 9 of 13 for 39 yards. Trevor Siemian 8 of 11, 93 yards and a touchdown pass. And Kyle Sloter came in and threw 7 for 7 for 50 yards, completed every pass. Looked pretty efficient out there. Leading the team in rushing was Stevan Ridley, 14 carries, 40 yards. And then D'Angelo Henderson had some pretty impressive plays, in my opinion. Had some elusive plays, getting 6 carries for 30 yards. But it was also a really huge threat out of the backfield. He caught 2 passes for 20 yards. He actually caught a pass from Trevor Siemian before this first half was over, late in the second quarter. I think there was maybe a minute left, where he caught an out route, caught it, bounced back inside and scored, but it was called back due to a holding call, and then the next play he hit Jordan Taylor for a back shoulder throw. Paxton Lynch carried the ball 3 times for 27 yards. And then Juwan Thompson, a guy who is so underrated in my opinion, a guy that I've always been a huge fan of for the Denver Broncos, got a chance to show himself last night. He had 3 carries for 26 yards and a 20-yard touchdown run. And he's a load, man. And I tell you what, Juwan Thompson has a spot on this roster despite all of the tailbacks. He can be a fullback type hybrid, H-back type guy. He is hard to bring down. He's a great blocker, and he hits the hole. And he's very patient when he runs the ball. So Juwan Thompson has been a guy on the Denver Broncos roster for about 4 years now who has gone under the radar among several other players. But Juwan Thompson, in my opinion, if he doesn't make the roster this year, it's because some other team picks him up. It's because some other team either takes him from the practice squad, or if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, he will make another roster somewhere around the National Football League. He's a pretty underrated guy. I have a lot of respect for Juwan Thompson. He's done a lot. C.J. Anderson carried the ball last night 7 times for 24 yards. C.J. Anderson had some plays out of the backfield too, catching the ball where he looked a little explosive. His longest run was for 10 yards, but C.J. Anderson didn't really hit the hole too hard last night. I think he was just getting in game reps. But there were several plays where he could have hit the hole a little harder to get more yards. There was a time where a block by Menelik Watson on the outside backer, he stuck him, but if he would have stayed on the block, C.J. Anderson could have sprung it a little more. But the guy made the play. But it's good to see C.J. Anderson back and healthy. He obviously, the play of the night for me, for C.J. Anderson, was he's a guy who never gives up. He's a guy who always runs hard and brings his feet, and we saw that when he scored. I thought he scored on the second play. It was a second down play, 2nd and goal. I thought he got in. They called him down at the 1-yard line, and the next play he carried 3 defenders into the end zone. That's what we missed from C.J. Anderson last year. And adding a guy like D'Angelo Henderson, who, in my opinion, is faster than C.J. Anderson, but is just as bulky and has that bowling ball type of running speed and ability to him, I think he is a dynamic guy. And obviously, we still have to factor in, okay, Jamal Charles. We haven't seen Jamal Charles yet. I think he will play next week against the Green Bay Packers in preseason. Jamal Charles he still has that explosive ability. I still think Charles makes the team. And there's nothing wrong if the Denver Broncos decide to go with the 3-back, 4-back rotation, because you want to keep guys like C.J. Anderson healthy and Jamal Charles healthy. And then you got to factor in, you got a guy like D'Angelo Henderson, who, in my opinion, is an instant lock for a roster spot for the Denver Broncos. He's got to make it. And I just don't, obviously Devontae Booker being injured doesn't help him, but do the Broncos surprisingly cut him? I'm not sure. I have no idea. But then you have a guy like Stevan Ridley who's also fighting for a roster spot, who's not looking bad at all either. Their Broncos have a lot of depth at running back. They'll be okay. I think you do have to have maybe four active tailbacks on the roster if you do keep Jamal Charles, just so C.J. Anderson and Charles don't have a lot of tread and wear and tear. They got to stay healthy. It's imperative for the Denver Broncos to keep these two guys healthy if they're on the roster. C.J. Anderson will be on the roster, but if Jamal Charles is on the roster, you got to keep him and C.J. Anderson healthy, in my opinion, if you want to have long-term success, especially in the run game. Because when C.J. Anderson went out last year, they didn't have a lot of depth at tailback that they do this year, and it hurt them. And Devontae Booker struggled, but he came on late. And I will admit that he did look impressive late for the Denver Broncos. But you have a guy like D'Angelo Henderson who's making things very, very interesting in Dove Valley. And then talk about depth. Look at receivers. There's a lot of depth at receiver. I do think Benny Fowler will be the number 3 wide receiver. I think he's played well enough in the preseason. He's looked good enough in camp to where it's going to be Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders at 1 and 2. You got Benny Fowler at 3. You got guys like maybe Cody Latimer, Isaiah McKenzie in there at the 4 spot. I think Marlon Brown's going to be fighting for a roster spot. It's just too early to tell right now. I think Khalif Raymond may make the roster. He's been battling pretty well at wide receiver, but also in the return game. He provides some value for the Denver Broncos there, so I don't know if he's gone. But it almost appears as if Hunter Sharp may be the odd man out just because the Denver Broncos have so much depth. But Kyle Sloter and Sharp have connected very well in the preseason. Defensively, last night, I thought the Denver Broncos played pretty well. It looked like even with Jared Crick out, with Derek Wolfe out, with Billy Wynn out, just these injuries to your defensive line, Shane Ray, Shaquille Barrett, the Denver Broncos' run defense did pretty well, and I thought, in my opinion, Tyreek Jarrett and Zach Kerr had a very amazing game, in my opinion. They played very well. I thought they were pretty stout in the run game. Obviously, Domata Peko, too, in the first quarter. They played well. They struck with their hands, and they didn't really allow any penetration. They flowed. As a middle linebacker, when you're trying to read the run keys, you're reading the guard. Okay, when the guard pulls, the guard steps down, you fill. And you have a tackle in Domata Peko, and I think Zach Kerr is going to be huge for the Denver Broncos this year. He struck him, and he flowed downhill. It's hard. It's what we call playing force. And the tailbacks didn't really have any cutback lanes for the San Francisco 49ers last year, who put up over 400 yards of offense the previous week against the Kansas City Chiefs defense as well. So I do see a lot of different things here. I'm very excited for what the Denver Broncos have in terms of depth on defense and on the offensive side of the ball. I think the D-line, the run game looks much more improved for the Broncos offensively, and the run-stopping defense looks a lot better for the Denver Broncos as well. But the Denver Broncos forced a lot of turnovers yesterday. Chris Lewis-Harris had a really pretty spectacular interception play where the receiver caught it. Lewis-Harris kind of made the wrap-up tackle and took the ball at the same time. In one continuous motion, the Denver Broncos got the ball. The Broncos forced several turnovers. Brian Hoyer had one, and the big man picked it up. I think the Denver Broncos have depth at almost every major position, and I wrote about that on Predominantly Orange a couple days ago. But in my opinion, the area that really struggled last night for the Denver Broncos was special teams. Brock Olivo, first year as an actual special teams coordinator, I think he's a great coach. I think he'll be all right. But the Denver Broncos struggled, and they were hurting on kickoff coverage. They gave up a huge play, several huge plays on kickoff, and I think the Gunners have to work on keeping that contained, especially going through the middle. Guys couldn't get off blocks, and the return game wasn't that stout last night either for the Denver Broncos as well. Brennan Langley returned the first opening kickoff, probably about 5 yards deep into the goal line and advanced it out, and then the Broncos start off with terrible field position, maybe at the 12 or 11-yard line. Got to be smarter on that. Got to be smarter on when you're taking out a return. I just didn't see a lot last night from Denver Broncos special teams outside of D'Angelo Henderson, who his kick coverage was absolutely phenomenal on punt and kickoff. He flew down there. He made plays. So what can't D'Angelo Henderson do? That's my question. But I think the special teams can improve. They will improve. I know Olivo is going to go into the meeting room, and they're going to fix a lot of things. It's a lot of these young guys that are trying to find a spot on the roster. They're sitting there trying to make a name for themselves in the NFL. So we are going to cover real quick. We're just going to go through some Broncos tweets, hashtag Broncos, and we're going to read off what some fans say. And this guy, Mitz Sumbalang, says, as many misses as Elway has had in the Broncos' first 2 days of draft, he's been raking in diamonds in the rough on the third day. And I think what he's talking about there, what Mitz is talking about, is John Elway's has a great history of picking up guys late in the draft that end up being more pivotal playmakers than some guys that are drafted in the first round or the second round or even the third round. So I think that's what he's trying to summarize there. A lot of people are talking about the Denver Broncos quarterbacks. A lot of people are angry. A lot of people are in denial. You see a lot of it. It says, Brandon Stokely, this competition is over. No need to keep this thing going. It's so obvious. Game over. And that sounds like it. And then you have Glad Hand Bart saying, well, Broncos country, looks like we have to wait a year for Chad Kelly to take the reins to have a contending team again. Okay, this is where I get irritated. This is where I get frustrated. Chad Kelly, if it wasn't for some prolific playmaking ability, would not be on an NFL roster right now due to his history, due to a lot of other elements of what he's done. So when you think and you say that Chad Kelly's going to come in and obviously the Denver Broncos are going to be instant contenders because of Chad Kelly and what he's done at Ole Miss, are you kidding me? Please stop talking about football. This stuff absolutely bothers me. The fact of the matter is, Chad Kelly was the last pick of the draft. Okay, and he's on a short leash in the NFL. Granted, because of all the stuff he did in college, the questionable stuff. Chad Kelly is not going to be the Denver Broncos starting quarterback. He won't be the Denver Broncos starting quarterback next year, 2 years, or even 3 years from now. He's a guy, he's a project, they brought him in for camp. In my opinion, he won't be the Denver Broncos quarterback. He may be another team's quarterback, like the Jaguars maybe in the future. He's not the Denver Broncos quarterback. So that one-sided, the ignorance of that kind of tweet just absolutely blows me away, because this is all you see on Twitter now. On social media, you see these kind of tweets, and it absolutely drives me insane. Looks like we have to wait a year for Chad Kelly to take the reins to have a contending team again. What gives you the impression that Chad Kelly is going to take this team and make them instant contenders? I have no idea what you're drinking, what's in your coffee cup, but I don't want any, because that is absolutely over the top and ridiculous. Midsummerlang, once again, Brock Olivo really needs to tighten up that special teams coverage. They've been poor these first two preseason games. I think that they've had a couple plays on kickoff where they have given up a little too much yardage. I think they will be okay, though. It just as much as it is a learning process for the players, it is for Brock Olivo. Okay, he's a great coach. He's got a great mentality. He simplifies it for his players. Now all the players have to do is go out and execute. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's on him. I absolutely get that. So, at the end of the day, when we talk about it, the Denver Broncos going forward have a lot of decisions they have to make. Obviously, at the tailback position, wide receiver, defensively. They have guys that probably won't be on the roster, but guys that are making plays and guys that can be impact players. In my opinion, if I had to say there's one diamond in the rough defensively that I've seen during preseason, during training camp so far for the Denver Broncos, it would have to be Jamal Carter, who can play inside backer, outside backer, safety, and corner. He's that kind of an athlete. He's a prolific playmaker. He's been making plays in training camp, even against the San Francisco 49ers in their joint practices. He makes plays. And I think with his level of versatility and athleticism and the ability to make plays, not only is he going to be a special teams guy, but I think he can sneak into the rotation defensively this year. Todd Davis is hurt for the Denver Broncos. He had that shoulder injury, and him not getting reps in preseason, in my opinion, is going to hurt him. I think it can hurt him, but I think guys who are playing really well right now, like Corey Nelson, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated players on this team. I think he's going to sneak in this year, either take the spot from Todd Davis, or he's going to be in on pivotal downs because he is a much better coverage linebacker. You get Brandon Marshall healthy. You get guys like Derek Wolfe healthy again, Jared Crick. Maybe you have some more solidarity at the defensive line. Many people were panicking about the defensive line due to injuries, but at the end of the day, After last night, I think the Denver Broncos will be okay with Zach Kerr, Tyreek Jarrett. I think Tyreek Jarrett's going to be a huge guy for the Denver Broncos this year, pun intended, at the tackle position. Kasim Edebali, I'm not quite sold on him yet. He's an okay playmaker right now. I saw a few instances last night where he did struggle to keep contained. You can't get sucked inside as a defensive end, as a rush end in the National Football League, especially when you have tailbacks that are out there that are currently in the NFL right now. I do think that the Denver Broncos have a lot of great young talent, a lot of great young depth that will maybe go on the practice squad that can't necessarily play on the 53-man game day roster. But I'm pretty excited for what the Denver Broncos have to hold. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers are coming to town this week, Saturday, August 26th, the night of Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather. I'm going to be watching the Broncos game because I don't want to fork out $100 to watch a pay-per-view boxing shenanigan spectacular, whatever they got going on there. I'm a huge Conor McGregor fan. I'm Irish myself. Support my boy, but it's Broncos first, man. It's Broncos first, and it's always been that way. So look forward to that. Obviously, I think maybe we'll see a lot more from the starters. They may play a whole half rather than just one quarter and a half. I think they'll play the whole half, and then it'll be the young guys from that point forward. I don't think the Denver Broncos are going to do too much. I do anticipate they will announce who the starting quarterback will be this week. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe Wednesday they will finally announce it. But support the team. This is my biggest point. If you're a Denver Broncos fan, you're listening to me right now, regardless if you wanted Paxton Lynch to become the starting quarterback, regardless if you want Trevor Siemian to be the starting quarterback, support the Denver Broncos. Okay, the last time I checked, being a fan meant you support the team no matter who's at the helm, rather than rooting for them to fail. And last year we saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of people last year hoping that Trevor Siemian got hurt just so Paxton Lynch could play. And I seen it from the other side too. Whichever team gives the team the best chance to win on Sundays, that's the guy who is going to be the most consistent, most error-free guy. That's the guy you got to play. Plain and simple. And if you think otherwise, you should definitely go stick to watching tennis because it doesn't work that way. The NFL is a business. The Denver Broncos are in a position where all they want to do is compete for world championships every single year, just like the New England Patriots, and that's what they're going to do. So, this is Cody Rourke, your host of the Predominantly Orange podcast. Follow me on Twitter at CodyRourkePO. Head over to predominantlyorange.com. Follow all my other staff writers that I have the opportunity to write with. Our great editor, Sarah and Ty Walden. Okay, they're great guys. Go over there, give them a follow, talk with them. And here's my plea. Here's my plea for everybody on Denver Broncos Twitter, Broncos Country Twitter. It's okay to have a disagreement. It's okay to not agree with the opinion of the guy you're debating with. But don't resort to tearing people down. Don't resort to being negative, harmful in your words and what you hope. Be civil. It's okay to agree to disagree. That's the beautiful thing about life. But don't take it to that next point. Don't take it to that next level where you go above and beyond what should be. Okay? So this is Cody Rourke signing off on the Predominantly Orange podcast. Catch us on Twitter at PredomOrange. Catch me on Twitter at CodyRourkePO. Tune in. Head over to PredominantlyOrange.com. Engage in discussion over there in our article comments. Love interacting with all you fans over there. Tweet me. Tweet the staff. Enjoy your Sunday. NFL season, regular season is almost here. 2 more weeks of the preseason, and then we are off and ready. That's where everything counts. This is Cody Rourke, the host of the Predominantly Orange podcast.